I thought I was being helpful. Turns out I was just keeping everyone else comfortable while I drowned. That realization didn't come with lightning. No dramatic betrayal, just a quiet Wednesday afternoon and a text that made something inside me crack a little more than usual. Zach needs a new laptop. Can you front it? No greeting, no context, no question about how I was doing or if I had the money. Just a request. No. An expectation handed down like it was part of some silent contract. I never signed, but had been fulfilling for years. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply icon. And then I didn't reply at all. I just let it sit there like I'd let so many things sit over the years, until they piled up into something too big to ignore. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 28. I live in a small one-bedroom apartment just outside of downtown St. Louis. I work as a financial analyst for a mid-tier consulting firm. Not glamorous, but steady. I've had this job since I graduated, and before that, I worked 2 part-time jobs while putting myself through school. I started earning money at 16 and haven't stopped since. I've never missed a bill. Never defaulted on a promise. Never had the luxury to fall apart. Because falling apart for someone like me wasn't an option. If I stopped, everything stopped. My parents live on the south side of town, in the same house I grew up in. It's not big, not fancy, just old and tired like the people inside it. My dad worked construction for over 30 years until his knees gave out. My mom used to clean houses, but now mostly just stays home managing pills and doctor's appointments. And then there's Zach. 32 years old, a once promising art student who dropped out halfway through his degree and never quite found his way back. He lives with our parents unemployed, figuring things out as Mom likes to say. I've paid the electric bill every month for the last 4 years. Sent money for Dad's prescriptions, paid for the new roof. When a tree branch came down last fall and even covered Zach's emergency dental surgery when he cracked a molar on a popcorn kernel watching Netflix at 2 a.m. I didn't complain. At least not out loud, because I told myself I was doing the right thing. That family helps family, that I was lucky to be in a position to help. And for a long time, that was enough to keep going, until it wasn't. I opened my banking app that afternoon after the laptop text came in. My savings, once steady, now bleeding, hovered at a number far lower than I'd let it get. In years, I had been saving to buy a small condo, nothing extravagant, just something I could call mine. But the down payment I'd worked so hard to build had quietly disappeared under the weight of everyone else's emergencies. My dreams shelved so Zach could have dental work, so Dad could see the specialist, so Mom could buy supplements she swore made her sleep better. I stared at the numbers, the cold digital truth of my life, and felt something in my chest twist. It wasn't just about the money. It was the quiet assumption that I'd always be the one to fix it. That my needs didn't matter. That I could bend infinitely without breaking. That night I stopped at a bakery after work. I bought a chocolate cake with delicate roses, piped in pink and white frosting. It was for my mother's birthday. I had ordered it the week before like I always did, and had picked up a scarf she'd mentioned liking in a magazine. I even wrapped it carefully and tied the ribbon just right. But as I set the cake box on my kitchen counter, something inside me paused. I couldn't remember the last birthday I had celebrated my own. I think I was 20, maybe 21. After that, no one really did anything. No dinner, no cake, just a casual, "Oh, is it today?" followed by, "Can you help us with rent this month?" I hadn't thought much of it back then. Just brushed it off like I brushed off everything else. But now, standing alone in a kitchen, I paid for, surrounded by groceries I bought with coupons and calculators in my head. I realized the truth. I had been erased, not maliciously, not loudly, but erased all the same. I wasn't loved because I was kind. I was tolerated because I was useful. I picked up the scarf again, stared at the soft blue stitching, and placed it back in the bag. Then I sat down, closed my eyes, and listened to the hum of the refrigerator. That hum was the only sound in the apartment. It was dull ordinary, and somehow the most comforting thing I'd heard all week. I didn't sleep much that night. The next day was my mom's birthday. I left work early, changed into a soft cardigan, and placed the cake and gift bag in the passenger seat of my car. I even added a bouquet of flowers, and Nazy's her favorite. But when I pulled into the driveway of the house I used to call home, I didn't get out. I sat in the car engine idling, watching the living room light flicker through the window. I could see Zach's outline on the couch, probably gaming again. Dad's shadow moved across the kitchen. Mom was likely in her recliner watching her soap opera. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, and then I let go. I turned off the engine. I looked at the cake, at the flowers wilting slightly in the heat, at the gift bag on the floorboard. And I started the car again, not because I was angry, not because I wanted to make a point, but because, for the first time, I understood that walking in smiling, handing over the cake, pretending everything was okay, that would only tighten the loop around my neck. So I didn't knock. I didn't ring the bell. I drove away slowly, merging back into traffic like it was just another Thursday evening. No one called. No one asked where I was. And as I pulled into my apartment parking lot, the bag with the scarf still sitting on the floor of my car, I whispered to myself, it's strange how silence can feel more honest than words ever did. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew what had to end. And sometimes that's enough of a beginning. They forgot me in the will, but remembered me when the bills came due. 2 weeks had passed since the night I sat in my car outside my parents' house, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the home I used to call safe. I didn't knock. I didn't drop off the birthday gift I'd wrapped for my mother. I didn't even text to say I wasn't coming inside. I simply turned the engine back on and drove away. No one called after me. No one noticed I didn't show up. But a few days later, my phone lit up like a blinking warning sign. Not with apologies, not with questions. Like, are you okay? Just requests, demands dressed up as expectations. The first text came from Zach. Hey, just checking, Mom said you were bringing the cake. I didn't reply. The next day, also Dad's inhaler refill came in. Think you could cover it? Still silence from me. Then my father mortgage is due Monday. Need you to handle that. 7 words, no greeting, no explanation, no kindness. And my mother, always more dramatic, sent something that read, Claire, don't abandon us. We need you. None of them mentioned the will. None of them acknowledged what I'd found in that living room, tucked between the property tax statements and cable bills, my absence from their future, and yet they still expected me to finance their present. I was sitting at my tiny kitchen table in my 1-bedroom midtown apartment when the weight of it all hit me. I sipped my coffee, the warmth doing little to steady the cold rising through my chest. I opened my banking app, already half knowing what I'd see, but needing to see it anyway. The numbers told the story. Mortgage, $980 paid. Electric, $143 paid. Water, $56 paid. Pharmacy refill, $79 paid. All of it still coming out of my account. I had walked away physically, but financially, I was still shackled to that house, like a ghost, keeping the lights on. I stared at the screen, then closed my eyes. It wasn't the money that made my hands tremble. It was the clarity, the realization that I had been financing a structure that didn't see me as family, only as a function. Later that night, I turned on my laptop. The apartment was quiet except for the low hum of the fridge and the occasional honk from the street. I opened each account, mortgage company, utility providers. The card I'd been using for Zach's online orders. One by one, I found the autopay settings and turned them off. Click. Mortgage, canceled. Utilities, cancel. Zach's card, deleted. Pharmacy, off. With each click, it felt like I was severing a cord that had once been invisible. I wasn't angry. I wasn't crying. It felt surgical, like cutting out a tumor that had gone undetected for far too long. Before shutting down, I typed one short message to my father. I didn't cut you off. I just stopped a man pretending this was fair. Then I closed the lid and went to bed. No guilt, just sleep. And that night, I dreamed of nothing. The following week was quiet, eerily so. No text, no voicemail, not even a passive-aggressive emoji from Zach. I didn't know what I'd expected, maybe panic, maybe accusations, or some attempt to guilt me back into place. But what I got was silence. And oddly, it didn't scare me. It felt like a space. A blank canvas. Each day I woke up, made coffee, opened the window, and let in the St. Louis morning light. I went for walks through Tower Grove Park. I read books I hadn't touched in years. I cooked dinners for one, plated them neatly, and savored every bite like a ceremony. No one asked how I was doing. No one thanked me for the years I'd sacrificed. No one reached out to make amends. They only reached out when they needed something. Now in their silence, I could almost feel their structure trembling, like a house losing its foundation. The house I had unknowingly been holding up with both arms, both legs, and every fiber of my sanity. I walked past a small flower shop on South Grand that had a now hiring sign in the window. I didn't need a second job. But I thought of Zach, unemployed for years, living in that same house I once cleaned with my allowance money as a teenager. He wasn't helping with the bills, but somehow still needed a new laptop. Inside the coffee shop across the street, I sat with a cappuccino and watched the city move. Couples walked, dogs, kids zipped past on scooters. People laughed in the outdoor seating area. No one here knew me. No one asked for anything, and for once, I didn't feel guilty about it. I remembered a moment from a year ago, standing in the kitchen of my parents' home. I had just gotten a raise. I shared the news, expecting, if not celebration, at least a smile, my mom said. "That's good. So now you can cover Zach's dental bill, right?" And I had nodded, because back then saying no felt like betrayal. But now, it felt like freedom. That house still existed. Those people still lived there. But they no longer lived inside my head, my bank account, or my future. I made pasta that night, simple spaghetti with homemade sauce and garlic toast. I poured myself a glass of red wine and sat on the floor, since I still hadn't bought a proper dining table. But for the first time in a long, long while, I felt full. I hadn't earned their thanks, and they hadn't earned my continued sacrifice. The phone stayed silent, and this time I wasn't afraid of it. I was waiting, because sometimes silence isn't an absence of sound. It's the sound of people starting to realize what they've lost. And I was listening closely, not to their words, but to what their silence revealed. They didn't just use my money. They rewrote the truth with it. 3 weeks had passed since I severed the financial lifeline to my family. The silence that followed was both unsettling and liberating. No more texts about overdue bills, no more calls requesting emergency funds. Yet a nagging thought lingered. What had they been doing with the money I sent before the cutoff? Late one evening, I sat in my modest midtown apartment, the glow of my laptop illuminating the room. A half-empty glass of wine sat beside me, untouched. I logged into the old joint bank account, one I had access to for years. Primarily to monitor mortgage payments. I hadn't checked it since moving out, assuming everything was as it should be. The transaction history told a different story. The last 3 mortgage payments I had transferred, totaling over $3,000, had not been used for their intended purpose. Instead, the funds had been diverted to various expenses: online shopping sprees, credit card payments, and substantial cash withdrawals. Not a single dollar had gone toward the house. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the statements. Each line item felt like a betrayal etched in digital ink. I had been led to believe that my contributions were keeping a roof over their heads, preserving the family home. In reality, I had been financing their lifestyle while they neglected the very foundation they claimed to protect. Determined to uncover the full extent of the deception, I called the mortgage company the next morning. After navigating through automated menus and hold music, I finally reached a representative. "I'm calling to inquire about the status of the mortgage for the property at 1123 Maple Drive," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. After a brief pause, the representative responded, "The account is currently 8 months delinquent and is in pre-foreclosure status." 8 months. That meant they had stopped paying the mortgage well before I ceased my contributions. Yet they continued to accept my money under the guise of saving the house. I hung up the phone, a mix of anger and disbelief coursing through me. The realization that my family had not only misused my trust, but had also manipulated me into funding their negligence was a bitter pill to swallow. That evening, I composed a message to my father. The bank says you're 8 months overdue. I kept sending money. Where did it go? I hit send and waited. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. Dad flashed on the screen. I stared at it. The device vibrating in my hand. I didn't answer. If there was an explanation, I needed it to come not through a phone call, but through actions that spoke louder than words. I answered the phone, but this time I wasn't the daughter they remembered. I was the witness they feared. The call came just past 10 p.m. on a Friday night. My apartment was dimly lit, only the amber glow from the kitchen under cabinet light casting soft shadows across the counter. Outside, the wind rattled softly through the fire escape, and a single car passed below with a lazy hum. I stared at the phone as it rang for the 4th time that evening. Dad, blinking across the screen. I let it ring a little longer than necessary. Not out of cruelty, but to remind myself this is different now. When I picked up, I didn't say hello, I waited. Claire, my father's voice croaked, I guess you saw the messages. He sounded older than he did a month ago. Tired, but not the kind of tired that comes from reflection. More like the weariness of someone losing control. I saw everything I said evenly. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, searching for the right words. I imagined him in the living room recliner, one hand clutching the armrest, the other gripping the phone. Maybe Mom was pacing behind him, coaching his lines. Maybe Zach was sprawled across the couch as usual, eavesdropping with that look of lazy detachment. Dad finally spoke. There's been a lot going on. We didn't mean for things to get this far. We just thought it would work itself out. I closed my eyes. You thought lying about the mortgage would work itself out. You thought stealing from your daughter would work itself out. It wasn't stealing. He snapped quickly, then softened. We were in a tight spot. We needed to pay off some things. Other bills, the credit cards, repairs. You should have told me the truth. A sharp exhale on the other end. Then in the background, a rustling. And suddenly my mother's voice broke through. Claire, she said, her tone clipped. You don't understand what we've been through. You left us. That's why everything fell apart. I felt a laugh rise in my throat, dry and cold. You mean I stopped paying your bills? That's what you mean by left. We depended on you, she hissed. Family does that. They depend on each other. No, I replied calmly. You exploited me, there's a difference. She went quiet. For a moment, the line was still. Then came the sound I knew too well. Her faux sob, complete with trembling breath and high-pitched guilt. Do you know how hard this has been on us? Your father's health is failing. Your brother is trying his best. And you? How could you abandon us like this? I didn't flinch. I didn't fall into that old rhythm where her voice manipulated my heart like a piano key. Where's the money? Mom, I asked directly. 3 months of mortgage payments, over $3,000. Where did it go? The silence that followed was heavier than any shouting. Then a voice I hadn't heard in weeks barged into the line. Oh, come on, Claire, Zach muttered, as if my question was an inconvenience. You're making a big deal out of this. It's not like you're starving. Why can't you just help like before? I nearly dropped the phone. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake them all until they understood what they'd done. But instead, I took a breath. Inhaled slowly through my nose, exhaled through clenched teeth. I helped, I said slowly. For years I paid for school you didn't finish. Covered rent repairs, groceries, insurance prescriptions. I skipped vacations, said no to myself 100 times, so you could say yes, and you didn't say thank you. You just asked for more. My mom jumped in again louder this time. You make good money. We just needed some support. And now you've left us to rot in this house, while you live in your fancy apartment and pretend we don't exist." My hand clenched tighter around the phone. But my voice somehow stayed level. "Support is a gift, not a contract." There was a rustle. Dad was back on. "Look," he began, his voice lower now, tired and broken. "We made mistakes, but the house is falling apart. We've got no options left, Claire. We need you, just this one." I tilted my head toward the ceiling. I could see the single crack running above the kitchen light fixture. The soft hum of my fridge felt louder in the momentary silence. "Just this once," I repeated. "Yeah," I swallowed. "Who's going to change you?" I asked, or Zach, who still hasn't worked a day since I left. Dad hesitated. "He's trying." "No, he's not, and you know it. You all just hoped I'd stay stupid and quiet long enough to pay your way through life." "That's not fair," he said. "No," I said, "it's finally fair." And then the moment came. The one I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my head, but never spoken aloud. "Then lose the house," I said. "It's not my responsibility anymore." There was an audible intake of breath, like the gasp of a diver who surfaced too fast. On the other end, no one said a word. I could feel their silence, dense, wounded. Stunned, I ended the call, not with rage, not with bitterness, just finality. I sat still for a long while after that, staring at the reflection of my face in the dark TV screen, the lines around my eyes, the heaviness under my cheekbones. I didn't cry. I didn't collapse. Instead, I stood, walked into my bedroom, pulled the phone from the charger, and powered it off. For the first time in years, I let the silence grow. 3 days passed. No phone, no email, no unexpected knocks on my door. I went grocery shopping. I cooked a simple pasta dish, watched a documentary on my laptop, and opened the windows to let in the spring breeze. It smelled faintly of jasmine and concrete. I breathed deeply. On the third morning, I made a cup of black coffee and carried it to the small balcony outside my apartment. The sun had just risen pale gold, touching the tops of the buildings. The city looked tired and beautiful, like someone who'd survived a long illness and was slowly finding their strength again. I wrapped a sweater around my shoulders and sat there quietly. No notification, no guilt, no weight I didn't choose to carry. And I thought, maybe freedom isn't winning. Maybe it's simply not losing yourself anymore. I used to think silence meant something was wrong, that a quiet phone, an empty inbox, or an unknocked door were signs of isolation, of abandonment. But now, sitting alone in this small apartment where the light pours through the blinds just so, I've come to learn something else. Sometimes silence is what healing sounds like. It's been 2 weeks since I last heard their voices. At first I expected backlash. I thought they'd show up at my door. Or maybe send long-winded texts, guilt-laced voicemails, passive-aggressive quotes about family on social media. I braced for the emotional storm I had seen 100 times before. But nothing came. No explosions, no begging, not even a shallow apology. Just silence. And at first it unnerved me. I paced the floor at night, wondering if something had gone terribly wrong. If Dad had ended up in the hospital, if the house had finally been repossessed. If someone was planning a revenge I couldn't see coming. But no, I checked public records. The house was still in default. The utilities had likely been cut off, and their social media pages? Business as usual. Pictures of brunches, blurry photos of Zach at some local park. Vague posts about tough times and staying strong. They hadn't disappeared. They just moved on. Or maybe they were pretending to. But the truth lingered. And it was louder than any apology they never sent. I was not the daughter who walked away. For no reason, I was the daughter who stayed too long. And now, for the first time, I was the one choosing silence over suffering. I started making small changes. I removed the automatic payment info from my old banking apps. Closed out the shared streaming account we all used. I even threw away the stack of receipts I had been hoarding, like legal ammunition, proof of everything I had done, to keep their world spinning. I didn't need proof anymore. I had my peace. One night, while folding laundry, I came across a worn gray hoodie I hadn't worn since college. The sleeves were frayed. The inside smelled like old detergent and comfort. I slipped it on and looked in the mirror, and for the first time in a long while, I saw someone I recognized. Not the tired fixer, not the invisible provider, not the guilty daughter, just Claire. Just a woman 28, who had learned that kindness when taken for granted becomes a leash, and silence, chosen silence, is not absence. It's power reclaimed. Still, there were moments of doubt. A part of me still wondered, did I go too far? Was cutting ties too drastic? Would I regret it one day when the house was gone? When the people who raised me were left to their own mess? But then, I'd remember the years of quiet suffering. The birthdays forgotten. The holidays turned into budget meetings, the way they called me selfish for wanting space, but never called me selfless for paying their bills. And I knew they hadn't just depended on me. They depended on me staying quiet. Now I wasn't quiet, I was gone. One Sunday morning, I took a long walk through Forest Park where magnolia trees had just started to bloom. The air smelled clean. People laughed around me. Couples sipped coffee on benches. Kids kicked soccer balls down the hill. No one knew my story. No one needed to. And for once, I wasn't shrinking to fit someone else's crisis. I was just existing. Midway through the path, I sat under a tree, pulled out my notebook, the same one I used for tracking my budget for years, and opened to a fresh page. Instead of numbers, I wrote a letter. Not to them, to me, Claire. I wrote, "You are allowed to let go of people who only held you when you were useful. You are allowed to build a life where your value isn't measured in dollars or favors. You are allowed to be loved without paying for it." I signed it with my full name, underlined it twice, then tore out the page and folded it into my wallet. That piece of paper wouldn't erase everything that happened, but it was the first thing I'd ever written just for myself. A few nights later, I got one last message from an unknown number. It said, "We're losing the house. I hope you're happy." There was no signature, no greeting, no ownership, just blame. I didn't reply. I deleted the message, blocked the number, and poured myself a cup of tea. And in that moment, I realized something that made me smile. Really smile for the first time in months. I wasn't happy because they were losing the house. I was happy because I wasn't the one losing anymore. Claire's story isn't just about money. It's about identity, boundaries, and the quiet courage it takes to walk away from emotional debt. Too often, the good child is expected to give endlessly, while others take without thanks or change. But Claire chose peace over guilt. She stopped trying to save people who refused to save themselves. Personally, I believe this story is a reminder. Kindness should never be mistaken for obligation. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to choose yourself. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Are you living for others at the cost of your own peace? Like this video if you believe setting boundaries is a form of self-respect. Comment below, have you ever had to walk away to protect your worth? Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real-life stories that inspire courage and clarity.